Okay, and what I want to do in this video is to continue to develop your understanding of national income. And what we are going to do is to present an issue, a problem, a flaw with measuring national income over periods of time using the method that we have been using. Then we're going to give a way that again is not examined in the IB but is designed only to improve your understanding of what is trying to be done when we make these changes, and we will in later videos analyze the exact issue that we're going to examine here using methods that are examinable in the IB. So of course we're still in the national income playlist, we're on national income 4. So what I would ask you guys to do is to, particularly if you've seen the previous videos, is to calculate national income for this country in 2008 and 2009. And once you have an answer, so obviously press pause now, and once you have an answer, press play and we'll go through the answers together. Okay, well I hope you've had a chance to do that, and of course we're as always currently now using this formula, okay, which is the price of one good multiplied by the quantity of that good produced plus the price of another good multiplied by the quantity of that good produced. We do that for every single good that was produced in the economy in that year and we get national income. So looking at 2008, of course, there's two types of goods in each year. Okay, so what we have now is the total value of all output of all computers that has been added to the economy in 2008. So the price or value of computers in 2008 is €1,000, and there was 10 computers produced. So it's 1,000 by 10, which gives 10,000. And the price and quantity of cameras produced in 2008 were €100 and 10 units respectively. And what we get then is when we multiply 100 by 10, we get 1,000, and that gives us the total value of cameras that was produced that added to national income in that year. When we add 10,000 and 1,000, we get €11,000. That is the total value of production of all goods and services produced in 2008 in that economy. Now for 2009, what we have to do again is price by quantity plus price by quantity. So the price of computers now is €2,000, and the quantity of computers that was produced is 30 computers. So it's 2,000 times 30, which is 60,000. Plus the price of cameras now is €200, plus the quantity of cameras that was produced is 30. So the idea now to calculate the value of cameras, the output of cameras in the economy in 2009, it's 200 by 30, which is 6,000. If I add the total value of all goods and services produced in the economy in 2009, I get 66,000. Now, going back to the consistent sentence that I always make, that production is wealth. Okay, so let's examine only production, because what we produce we can consume, and it is only changes in production that bring about a change in our standard of living. So what we have here for the quantity of computers, they have gone from 10 computers produced in 2008 to 30 computers produced in 2009. So that's a tripling of the quantity of computers, okay? And then the quantity of cameras has gone from 10 cameras produced in 2008 to 30 cameras produced in 2009, and that is a tripling again. So what I want you to see is that if production is wealth, which it is, our ability to consume brought about by changes in production has increased threefold. So we are now able to consume 3 times in 2009 the amount that we were able to consume in 2008. So therefore, our wealth has tripled. That's fantastic. Okay, never happen in reality, but this is just for illustrative purposes. So therefore, if these numbers are to accurately reflect changes in our ability to consume brought about only by changes in the levels of production that has occurred in the economy, then this number here should be 3 times this number here. Again, why 3 times? This has been multiplied by 3 and this has been multiplied by 3. Production has tripled, therefore our ability to consume has tripled. Well, let's check it out. Okay, so let's do a GDP comparison or a national income comparison. What I'm going to do is I'm going to divide national income in 2009 by national income in 2008. And the answer that I actually get here is 6 times. Now, if, again, you understand what national income is and what it is trying to measure changes in our material standard of living, changes in our ability to consume, brought about only by changes in the level of production. Well, if these two figures were accurate, this figure here should be 3 times that figure there. And it is not, as we've already seen, it's 6 times. So something else must have happened in the economy to give an inflated figure in 2009 when comparing it to 2008. Well, let's examine what else happened. Well, the prices of computers doubled and the prices of cameras doubled. So that has brought about, so we said it should be triple, but it's not. It's twice triple, which is 6 times the value in 2008. And what else has changed? Inflation has occurred. Now, the definition of inflation is a sustained increase in the general level of prices. So if we want this measure of national income, calculating GDP, to accurately reflect changes in our standard of living brought about by changes in our ability to consume, which is as a consequence of changes in our production, and I know that's a mouthful, you may need to rewind the video just that little bit to listen to that again. If we want these figures to accurately reflect changes in the standard of living, well then these figures here can only change if output changes. And again, I really need you to understand this, guys, because our standard of living is based on our ability to consume, and our ability to consume, at very least in the long run, is based on our ability to produce. Excuse me. If our production has tripled, which it has in this example, well then our ability to consume has tripled. Therefore, this figure should be 3 times that figure, and it's not, it's 6 times. Why? Because inflation has occurred, which has artificially given us a number far greater than accurately reflects our ability to consume, accurately reflects the change in our ability to consume brought about by the change in production. So we need, if we want these figures to be accurate, we need a measure of national income which only ever changes. This number, as compared to this, only ever changes as a result of changes in production and not as a result of changes in prices, because the inflation has not made any of us better off, at least in the long run, no way. Okay, so we need national income only to change when we're comparing 2 years as a result of changes in production. And again, forgive me for saying it for the 1,000th time, because what we produce we can't consume. So therefore, we only want a measure of our ability to consume, which is our real standard of living, hence the term real national income. So what I'm going to say now here is this idea of real national income or real GDP up the top here versus nominal national income or nominal GDP. So GDP or national income measures the total value of all goods and services produced in an economy. If the value of total production rises from one year to the next, well, at least one of 2 things must be true. Okay, the economy is producing a larger quantity of goods and services. That's economic growth. Okay, the definition of economic growth is an increase in the total quantity of all goods and services produced from one year to the next, or from one period to the next. Okay, we want that. That's good. Greater production means we have a higher standard of living, because greater production means greater consumption. All right. Or the second thing could be occurring, which is goods and services are being sold at higher prices and a sustained increase in the general level of prices. Overall, prices have risen. That's called inflation. Now again, I will not shut up about this, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going on for way too long. Remember, it is the total amount of goods and services that are produced which defines the wealth of a nation. If more goods and services are produced, the country is better off. Why? Because we can consume more. If less goods and services are produced, like right now during the COVID pandemic, because businesses are shut, well then we are worse off. I'm not saying that's a bad thing in terms of the actions of governments. I'm just saying economically it is a bad thing. Okay, and what national income or GDP or GNI, which you'll see later on, is trying to measure is how well off a country is. So when studying changes in national income over time, economists want to separate the effects of increase in production that causes national income to increase and increase in the level of prices that also inaccurately causes national income to increase. Why does inflation inaccurately cause national income to increase? Because it does not represent an increase in our ability to consume goods and services. So what we're saying was economists want to measure total value of goods and services the economy produces that is not affected by the changes in those prices. And again, quantity produced equals quantity consumed. Wealth of a nation. So we look at this measure called real GDP. And I will say this before I start this, guys, that you will not be asked to calculate this in your IB. And you could be saying to me, and fair enough, saying, well, why the flip am I learning it? And my answer is you have to understand what's going on before you look at GDP deflator, before you look at CPI, okay? And you may not even know what those things are, and rightly so, you shouldn't unless you were told. But you need to understand what real GDP is in the first place, and then you can up-level it to questions that are covered in the IB. So what I would like you to do now, don't make any changes to anything. Do exactly as you were in the previous question. We are going to, I know that you can see the prices have increased. Just use the prices that exist in that year as you have been doing, and then we'll have another look. We'll make the point again, essentially. So pause the video, please, have a go at these questions, work out national income for 2008, 2009 and 2010, and once you have 3 answers, 1 for each year, press play and we'll go through it. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to do that. So all I'm just going to do is again the normal formula. That will change in a second, okay? And I'm going to go through this stuff quickly, okay? So the price of hot dogs in 2008 multiplied by the quantity of hot dogs, which is here, and that's the total value of hot dogs produced that was added to the value of the total economy, and the price of hamburgers produced times the quantity of hamburgers produced, and we get 100. So we add these two together and we get 200. For 2009, we do the same, but we know that the prices have increased, which is going to give us an inaccurate figure, a figure that overstates the increase in our ability to consume, which has been brought about by production in the economy, and therefore we know that there's a problem with inflation. And in 2010, we do the same, and again we see prices increase, and again we should realize straight away, oh flip, there has been inflation, which is sustained increase in the general level of prices. So that's going to give us, overstate the figure, the number that national income gives us. It's going to overstate our ability to consume this year as compared to previous years. Now I've said all of this kind of stuff, so all I'm saying is here, what we calculated back there was what was called nominal GDP. We used the prices that existed in that period of time, and we multiplied those prices by the quantity that was produced in that period of time. We need a way to measure the value of these goods compared to each other. And I believe hamburgers was €2 and hot dogs was €1. So what we are saying there is society values hamburgers twice as much as it values each hot dog. It values each hamburger twice as much as it values each hot dog. And how do I know that? Well, because the prices were doubled. Okay, so I'll come to all this in a second. So now what I'm saying was the price of hamburgers is twice that of hot dogs. So that's why we need prices in some way, is to measure the relative value of the two goods against each other. But we also need a way of calculating national income which is not affected by changes in these prices. Now what I'm going to do now is present a way, again not examinable on the IB, well it's examinable but I doubt you'd ever see it on the IB, but you have to understand this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need prices because we need to compare the relative value of each good to each other. So price of hamburgers is twice that of hot dogs, therefore society values hamburgers twice as much as it values hot dogs. And the same is true here, 4 compared to 2, 8 compared to 4. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is use prices that don't change, but use quantities that do. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decide that I'm going to stick with the prices in 2008 for hot dogs and hamburgers for every year. But I'm going to use the quantity of hot dogs and hamburgers in the year that I am calculating. Now, that might not make sense to you, but first of all, I just want to see P base, so the price in the base year. I am choosing 2008 as my base year. That means I am using only the prices that existed for each good in 2008 to multiply by the quantity of hot dogs in each year, right, and the quantity of hamburgers in each year. I am not going to use the prices that existed in 2009 and 2010 because they are inflated. They are they are changing, which does not represent a change in our ability to consume brought about by a change in production. Okay, so in 2008, I'm going to use 2008 prices. And of course, I'm calculating 2008, so I'm going to use the quantity of hot dogs and hamburgers. So it's 1 by 100 plus 2 by 50, which equals 200. That was the exact same value that we got when calculating nominal income, which was for 2008, which was using the prices that existed in that period. Now, up until this point, you would have said €2 by 200 and €4 by 100. I'm not going to do that. I want a measure of national income that will only change as a result of a change in production. So for 2008, I'm going to value, or 2009, excuse me, I'm going to value the hot dogs at the price that existed in 2008, because we need a measure of relative value between the two goods. But I'm going to use the quantity of hot dogs that was produced in 2009. So what I'm doing now is I am calculating real national income, or real GDP, for 2009. I use prices that existed in the base year, and then I use the quantity that existed in this year. So I'm measuring national income for 2009, real national income, but I'm using the quantities in 2009 and the prices in 2008. So here, try to calculate the total value of the output of hamburgers, I'm going to use the price that existed in 2008. And remember, I'm calculating national income, real GDP for 2009, so therefore I have to use the quantity of hamburgers that was produced in 2009, okay? And I get 2 by 100, here's the 2008 prices, but the quantity in 2009, and that equals 200. And if I add those together, that's €400. Now I'm going to stop for 1 second, and I know I'm talking long, it's a long video and I apologize, but let's check. 400 is twice the amount that 200 is. No problem. 400 divided by 200 is 2. If this 400 represents an accurate change in our ability to consume brought about by changes in production, and this is twice that, then the production in 2009 should be on average twice the production in 2008. Well, let's check. Well, 200 hot dogs were produced in 2009 and only 100 was produced in 2008, so that has doubled. The quantity of hot dogs produced has doubled. We're right so far. 100 hamburgers was produced in 2009 and 50 were produced in 2008, so that means the quantity of hamburgers produced has doubled. The quantity of both goods has doubled and the value of national income has doubled. That is by far a much more accurate way of measuring the value or the change in our standard of living brought about by a change in our ability to consume as a result of changes in production. Now let's look at calculating real GDP for 2010. Okay, well, we don't want inflation to play a part, so what I'm going to say now is that I'm going to use the price of hot dogs in 2008, still sticking with the base year, but the quantity of hot dogs in 2010. So it's 1 times 400, which equals €400. The price of hamburgers in 2008 plus the quantity of hamburgers that was produced, it's 2 times 200, which is 400, and that is €800. That is a national income of €800. Now, again, let's examine. Okay, so between 2009 and 2010, national income has doubled. Great if you can get it. Largely impossible, pretty much, but great if you could. Okay, so let's compare the value of output between 2009 and 2010 only because we know that our consumption is solely dependent on our production in the long run. Right, well, in 2009, the quantity of hot dogs that was produced has doubled. 800 is double 400, so far we're right. And the quantity of hamburgers that we've produced, has also doubled. So the quantity of production has doubled over the 2 years. Therefore, 800 is an accurate reflection in changes in our standard of living, which means changes in our ability to consume brought about changes in production. Again, guys, I know I'm going on and on and on, but you really need to understand that. Let's just compare 2010 to 2008. Well, 800 divided by 200 is 4. So if these represent accurate changes in our standard of living as a result of changes in our ability to consume, which was brought about by changes in production, then production in 2010 should, on average, be 4 times higher than production in 2008. Well, 100 hot dogs was produced in 2008, and now 400 hot dogs have been produced in 2010. Yes, production has quadrupled. 50 hot dogs were produced in 2008. 200 hot dogs were produced in 2010. Yes, production there has quadrupled. The production of all goods, hot dogs and hamburgers, have quadrupled. Therefore, a number in 2010 that is 4 times bigger than 2008 is again an accurate reflection in changes of our standard of living. Really important that you understand this concept, guys. So to sum up, nominal GDP, nominal national income, uses prices that existed at the time, okay, to place a value on the economy's production of goods and services. Where real GDP, and again we will look at different ways of doing this, and again I will stress that this is not a way that you'll be using CPI, Consumer Price Index, and GDP deflator, okay, but real GDP uses constant base year prices, or it uses a way to remove the effects of inflation on calculating our national income figure. As real GDP is not affected by changes in prices, changes in real GDP reflect only changes in quantity produced, and that means quantities consumed. Therefore, real GDP is a measure of the change in an economy's production of goods and services, and as such is a more accurate measure of changes in wealth, I suppose, in the economy than nominal GDP. What I will ask you to do, guys, and I understand this video is going on for a little bit long, so I will be quick with this. I would ask you to try to do 2 things. You will get essentially 6, or depending on how you want to look at it, 5 different answers. What I would ask you to do is pause the video and try to calculate real and nominal GDP for those 3 years. Once you have done that, I'll press play and I'll go through the answers. Okay, well, hopefully you've had a chance to do that, so I'm just going to go through these answers rather quick, and I don't want to kind of just take forever doing this. So basically, these are the figures that I get now for 2009. These are the figures now and all the calculations. So underneath are the values that you get when you multiply those numbers out for 2010. And these are the figures here for 2011. And again, once you multiply out these figures and then you add them together, this is what we get. What I want you to see, it's not as clean as the last one, okay? And I did that intentionally. 2 things are happening. Is there economic growth? Yes, there is. Economic growth is an increase in the production of all goods and services in an economy over a period of time. That is true. But is there also inflation? Yes, there is. Inflation is a sustained increase in the general level of prices. That inflation is going to overstate the increase in our ability to consume, because these numbers are getting bigger, not only caused by increases in our production. Okay, it is also caused by increase in the prices. Now, to calculate real GDP, I'm going to use 2009 prices, and I'm going to change the quantities depending on the year. So what you should find is the base year, nominal GDP and real GDP are always the same. Always, always, always the same. Okay, remember that you get a price index of 100 in the base year. Okay, just that's for something later on. So for 2010, I'm using 2009 prices, but 2010 quantities, and I get that. For 2011, I'm using 2009 prices, but 2011 quantities, and that is my real national income. These are the real national incomes. Okay, now again, this is using a base year, which is the prices that exist in 1 year. You actually can use 2011 prices or 2010 prices. The convention is always to use the first one. It will give you different answers, but the rate of change will be the same. One final thing. Is Venezuela richer? Okay, basically we're coming now to something that I hope you would already know from watching the production and wealth videos, is about what causes inflation. So in 1990, nominal GDP in Venezuela was 2,279.3 bolívares. In 2004, let's say 14 years later, it was 206,125.4. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the nominal GDP in 2004 by the nominal GDP in 1990. And that means that the average standard of living in the country, if these are accurate reflections of changes in our standard of living, accurate reflection in changes in our ability to consume brought about by changes in production, is 90.43. If they were accurate reflections and changes in the Venezuelan standard of living, that would mean that if an average person had one house, one car in 1990, they would have 90 houses and 90 cars in 2004. Obviously, that didn't happen, and unfortunately, if you look at the news today and for the last number of years, you will see that there has been famine in Venezuela, there has been starvation, there's been nothing produced, therefore something else has happened. And what else has happened is something that has caused prices to rise a lot, okay? And what we need to do now is that if we look at this compared to this, we see, and I think if you work that out, that's like 1.25 times. So there's a 25% increase in the material standard of living in Venezuela over those 14 years. Okay, that's not too bad, to be honest with you, okay? But something else occurred which caused the nominal GDP to go up a crazy amount of times compared to the real GDP. Okay, this has gone up, what's that, let's say, in around 500, 550, something like that. And what has happened is rule number 2 in macroeconomics. Prices rise when the government, or more accurately, the central bank, prints too much money. That is what has happened in Venezuela. The government, like running the central bank, has said print a lot more money for reasons that we can talk about later. But basically, inflation is everywhere and always a monetary problem. Inflation usually essentially occurs when more money has been printed or the money supply has increased. Guys, I really, really hope that you understand everything that has happened in this video. I know it was long, and thank you so much for watching till the end. This is something that may need to be rewatched over and over again, but all I'm saying is the most important thing that you can do is understand the difference between real and nominal GDP. One, nominal GDP is affected by changes in the price level caused by government increasing the money supply or the central bank, and real GDP is not affected by changes in the price level. It is only affected by changes in production. And if real GDP is only affected by changes in production, then changes in real GDP are only brought about by changes in production. That means that any change in our standard of living is only brought about by changes in production, and that is reflected in real GDP. Guys, thank you so much, and I really, really hope this helped.